Defying gravity because if you look at the last 3 days, we talked about what the market has done. Baba's up 6% over the last couple of days, but it's up 23% against the S&P since Thanksgiving Friday, and there's different reasons for it. It's obviously been a story that we've talked about on the way down, and I joked the other night that we pretty much called the bottom on China when we opened our show with this China uninvestable on October 23rd, and in fact, since that point, I think Baba's up 45%, and it's outperformed the market. But there are reasons for it. The China reopening is something that isn't going to happen overnight, but the worst of this is certainly part to be priced in. Baba reported two weeks ago or so, you have a sense that there's a softening e-commerce demand that we're starting to see thaw and build a little bit. But I think it's as much to do with what I think is almost a peace treaty between the government and these big tech companies. They have kissed the ring. They have suffered badly. They settled with Ant Financial about 3 weeks ago. And I think if you're investing in emerging markets, that's the other thing. I've been adding to EM here. I've been nibbling at Baba, and I think this trade has more to go.
In terms of the COVID lockdowns, I mean, Xi Jinping really showed he had two choices, right? He could have said, we're going to continue with COVID zero policy and just sort of dig in your heels and just go forward. Or you can say, you know what, we're going to ease restrictions a bit. And what we saw is an easing of restrictions. So is now China investable? We see that the government is willing to make some concessions.
Investable, no. Tradable, absolutely.
Tradable.
We talked about it on the 24th as well. That was the day, if memory serves. It's that big gray thing that has an, what's that called? What? Elephant, the one with the memory, right?
Yes.
That's the one.
And a trunk.
Nailed it. With a trunk.
With a trunk.
We talked about it that day. Traded over 100 million shares, traded down to 58.63 from memory. Closed at 63. We said, this is the inflection point. You've had at least 35 to 50% rallies since Halloween of 2020, and we were about to embark on one. Stock's rallied 45%-ish since, and to Tim's point, I still think it has higher to go.
Or is this it?
Well, I mean, listen, you know, when you talk about what has happened in China around the zero COVID, I think it's window dressing. I don't think there's anything really going on here, and I don't think that's actually why the stock has rallied. You know, I mean, I think to Tim's point, I think the broader point is they spent the last year just cracking down on these huge tech conglomerates. So maybe just easing a little pressure off of that and what you think is positive news around zero COVID is enough to lift it off of just really negative sentiment.
I think the real challenge is we don't actually know what's happening with zero COVID. There's all these reports that it's really happening. But if you look, there are other reports saying that movement has been still very restricted. People are still very much staying at home. And so it's hard to really be sure what zero COVID is going to do. But let's say they do release restrictions. It's not actually going to have a huge impact on e-commerce, right? That's not what happened here anyway. Everyone just went out to restaurants and traveled. So I think it's important to keep in mind how that's going to play out. For us, it's still not investable, you know, not when you have this much regulatory risk.